Hello, I'm Jonathan. The theme I've been asked to follow in this talk is disciples who make disciples. What I want to show today is how important it was to Jesus that his disciples were not casual but committed, a vital lesson for us. So John chapter 6 starts with Jesus feeding the 5,000. A crowd of that number was tired and hungry, and miraculously Jesus arranges for all of them to be fed with 5 loaves and 2 fish, which a boy among the crowd happened to have. If that wasn't enough, there were 12 baskets of leftovers. Jesus then goes off by himself to a mountain. His disciples go back to the Sea of Galilee and start to row across. And Jesus joins them walking on the water. The next day, the crowd catch up with Jesus and his disciples. What follows in John is unique to his gospel and contains teaching which I will summarize. Jesus is concerned that the crowd understand what really happened the previous evening when they were fed and who he is. He starts by saying, "I am the bread of life. I am the bread that came down from heaven," at which the crowd began to grumble amongst themselves. Isn't this Jesus, Joseph's son, whose parents we know? How can he say he came down from heaven? Jesus goes on, "I am the living bread of life, which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. This bread is my flesh." And this teaching caused a lot of argument among the crowd. How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Finally, Jesus says, "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. My flesh is real food and my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me and I in him. Your forefathers ate manna and died, but he who feeds on this bread will live forever." Chapter 6 ends with a passage on the screen. On hearing it, many of his disciples said, "This is hard teaching. Who can accept it?" Aware that his disciples were grumbling about this, Jesus said to them, "Does this offend you? What if you see the Son of Man ascend to where he was before? The Spirit gives life, the flesh counts for nothing. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and they are life. Yet there are some of you who do not believe." For Jesus had known from the beginning which of them did not believe and who would betray him. He went on to say, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless the Father has enabled him." From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Jesus asked the 12. Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." As always, Jesus never says what we would have said and goes about testing the commitment and understanding of his disciples in a totally unexpected way. Jesus not only says the unpalatable, but he would have known that the statements about himself, which I've just mentioned, would be misunderstood and contribute to bitter division in the church for centuries. Catholics believe that when you eat the bread and drink the wine at communion, they literally become the body and blood of Christ, despite Jesus making it clear in verse 63 that the flesh counts for nothing. Protestants disagree. They see the bread and wine as symbolic. I remember Nicky Gumbel saying that whoever could reconcile these two positions should be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Since Jesus loses disciples in this story, what can it say to us who want to make disciples? First of all, don't compromise what you have to say to please your audience. Jesus knew that he would lose disciples, and not just temporarily. We're told that they no longer followed him. He then asks his closest disciples, the 12, whether they too want to leave him. The question is put in such a way as to invite the answer no, but however he put it, Jesus took a huge risk. He honoured the 12 by giving them the freedom to walk away. Perhaps the entire future of Christianity hung in the balance at that point. What if they had said yes? Peter saves the day and answers before anyone else, as was his style, by asking the greatest of rhetorical questions. To whom shall we go? He also provides the answer. You have the words of eternal life. We believe and know that you are the Holy One of God. The second lesson is know your audience. Jesus taught as he did here because his feeding of the 5,000 had been seen as a free meal ticket, which as someone who likes his food, I completely understand. Jesus knew their motivation in following him to the other side of Galilee and said, when they caught up with him, "You're looking for me not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill." In a crowd of that size, without huge television screens and PA systems, all most of them would have known is that they were hungry and suddenly there was food. Plenty to eat. Who wouldn't follow a man like that? Jesus had the advantage of knowing the thoughts and hearts of men and women. Usually we don't. So we have to tread more carefully in our conversations. Don't make assumptions. I've always found the questioning of witnesses in court a fascinating skill to watch. We shouldn't examine others as though they were witnesses in court. But a question or two can reveal a great deal about someone's motivation or understanding. Answering a question with a question was a technique Jesus often used, and its use is core training on Alpha. So what of my efforts to make disciples? Well, I'd like to believe that it's been more successful than is apparent to me. The high point has always been Alpha, which Sue and I ran for 3 years in the mid-90s. It's been the most wonderful way to make disciples. For me, its greatest strength, apart from the food, is the respect it gives people in presenting them with the truth and allowing them time to think for themselves, even if that's a lifetime. It's as far removed from indoctrination as you can get. In my secular work, I trained others to become solicitors. Aisha was a trainee I'll always remember. She was hugely personable and very outgoing, in contrast to my English reserve. I remember she had the boldness at a garden party in London to go up to the then Master of the Rolls, who's a very senior judge, and tell him that she was a great fan of his. The rooms at my firm were small, so trainees often had a room to themselves. Not Aisha. She saw that there was enough space for a second desk in my room, so despite the squeeze, she was there for 6 months. When I was on the phone, she would stop what she was doing, turn around and listen, which I found very unnerving. I taught her how to be a solicitor in my department. She taught me that we don't learn through walls or screens, but by being with our teacher. We don't stop anymore in our social media world. A principle I've learned is that we must learn to stop, like Aisha did, because we must stop to learn. The fact that she eventually went to America, gave up the law and became a PE teacher had nothing to do with my training. It's not uncommon these days for careers to change direction, but it's altogether a different matter with your faith. If ever you find yourself doubting whether you've chosen the right path, ask the same question as Peter. To whom shall we go? The answer, my friends, is that there is no one else apart from Jesus to whom you can go. And remember Peter's answer to Jesus. You have the words of eternal life.